Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
They say part of maturing is learning from past mistakes. If we go back about a year, there was an episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast where there was two hosts because one of them were missing. The Red Wings were on a heater and optimism got a little too high. And then it all fell apart. Learning from that, optimism will still be obnoxiously high today, but we will throw in this qualifier now so that nobody yells at us if it all falls apart in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I guess the other qualifier there is last time it was you and Ryan, and now I have to sit in here and be very careful with what I say this episode because anything that happens today is at an all-time clippable level. So, you know, there might be some sweeping proclamations, but they will not be coming from me.
And Ryan is not here to contain us. This is risky.
Yeah, the inmates are running the asylum today. Obviously, the Red Wings are back, apparently. And Ryan's very upset that he has to miss this episode. But, you know, better for us.
Better for the listeners, really.
Exactly.
Although with, I'm sure, all the audio editing mistakes and everything else, we will likely screw up. And the level of professionalism definitely going to come down a couple notches. But the clippability and the memes might be higher this episode.
Absolutely. This is the people's episode today, I would say.
The people's episode. I like that. There's the title. Probably not. Anyways, on that note, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. I am one of your hosts, not Ryan Hanna. You can call me Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
We are going to work our way through this intro as it is not something we do normally. But the one thing we do want to point out is to go to wingedwheelpodcast.com/shop to get all of your Play Effing Hockey merch. We heard you guys loud and clear. You wanted to see a run of that on some merchandise. We have done it, and you guys have responded. So we have got t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, hats. It's all there for you. wingedwheelpodcast.com/shop. On today's episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be recapping the two games that were both victories. Thursday against the Columbus Blue Jackets and last night against the Winnipeg Jets. We will also discuss how those two victories and the now 4-game winning streak affect the Red Wings' playoff chances, where they sit currently, and how likely it is that this could be a thing. We're going to talk about the World Junior Championships, which as of this recording, the semifinals have concluded, but the gold medal game has not, and how the Detroit Red Wings prospects in said tournament are doing or have fared. We're going to talk about a bit of craziness in Vancouver and how that could possibly affect the Detroit Red Wings with the no soap operas, just hockey involving Elias Petterson and JT Miller. And then we're going to jump into overtime. So let's get going on the games that were. Thursday, the Detroit Red Wings march into Columbus, Ohio, and walk away with 2 points. What is your ultimate takeaway from that game before we get into the details?
I think the craziest thing, obviously the finish of the game was insane, but how they got there was even the crazier part. You know, the late game goaltender interference challenge that wasn't to be, and they go on the penalty kill, massive block shot that leads to a Jonatan Berggren game winner. A crazy game. And, you know, I think ultimately the takeaway from me for this game was the Red Wings had every reason to pack it in that game. You know, they start early with too many men on the ice. Terrible sign if you get one of those at the start of the game, just not ready to go. And they go down early to start that game. They had every reason to not win that game, and the Red Wings found a way, and that's something we haven't seen since last season. So I think that was the biggest takeaway for me.
And anybody listening could be forgiven if they didn't realize going into that game, Columbus was 4 points ahead of Detroit.
Yeah.
In the wild card standing. So a very, very big swing on a team they are directly competing with for the 8th spot. And yeah, they went down early, as you mentioned, on a James Van Riemsdyk power play goal. But the big difference between the Red Wings under Todd McLellan and the Red Wings beforehand, by the end of that first period, 3-1 Red Wings. Patrick Kane crashes a net, buries a rebound. Looks like him and DeBrincat are going to get going, or are getting going, and we'll talk about that more with the Winnipeg game. This is how you know things are going well.
Yes.
The second goal of the game, an absolute missile off the stick of none other than Erik Gustafsson.
And
his first as a Red Wing.
And they gave Justin Hall the assist. So hell has frozen over just a little bit.
We are supposed to temper expectations on this podcast, but when Erik Gustafsson is scoring from Justin Hall, how can we possibly temper expectations? That is the definition of everything is going right for this team.
Yeah, talk about a new coach bump. It's just crazy. And, by and large, Merzlikins probably should have had the Gustafsson shot. It was bouncing a little bit off his stick, so, you can forgive it. But it's crazy that that's his first goal as a Red Wing, assisted by Justin Hall. What a world we're living in right now.
And then we go from an unlikely goal scorer to arguably the most likely goal scorer for the Red Wings this season. Alex DeBrincat on the power play off a nice feed, high to low from Mo Seider. DeBrincat walks out, rips it short side. Again, another goal Merzlikins probably should stop. But I want to pause on this goal before we get into the rest of the game, because these two goals, the Gustafsson and the DeBrincat one, highlight something the Red Wings weren't doing before McLellan got there. They're shooting.
Yes.
They are being way less picky with their shot selection. And not all of them are going to go in. When Elvis Merzlikins is in net, yeah, a few more might go in, but it's part of recognizing a goalie who's having an off night. Capitalize on it. Utilize it. It's a weakness. Shoot. And yeah, DeBrincat's was from a bad angle, not a shot you saw Detroit taking before under Lalonde. And Gustafsson was from the half wall almost at the point. That's a shot that very rarely goes in, but they're taking them, and you can see there's a clear mandate. And we'll talk about it more in the Winnipeg game, because I think they had like 17 shots in the first period of that game alone. It is refreshing to see the Red Wings changing something so fundamental and having good results. It's one thing when you change something fundamental about the way you play and the results don't come. Guys can get discouraged and shy away from that and revert back into old habits. But the fact that these pucks are dropping for the Wings is huge.
It's crazy to me how you can literally just play hockey and be better at it. It feels like this team has unshackled, might be too harsh of a word, too, critical of a word, but this team, there's something different about this team right now. The mood seems so much lighter amongst the players. Like you said, last night, Winnipeg, after the first period, the Red Wings had 17 shots on net. Like, they're just playing a different brand of hockey right now. They're playing a motivated brand of hockey, and they could lose these games, but the way they're playing, I would be saying the same thing.
Now, these still are the Detroit Red Wings.
Yes.
So by the end of the second period, it was 3-3. Goals from Zach Werenski and Sean Monahan for the Blue Jackets to tie it up. And again, to keep pointing out the differences and then the improvements and to keep optimism high. How many times this year have we seen the Red Wings blow a lead at any point in the game and you could just wipe your hands with it? That's the end of the game.
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
The snowball is going to keep going. We're done here. Nope. Dylan Larkin on the power play. And I think Ryan put out on Twitter after this one, 1,000 years good fortune to Lucas Raymond for giving Larkin that empty netter and breaking the dam, because Larkin has absolutely heated up since that moment. And again, Larkin on the power play from DeBrincat and Kane. Exactly what the Red Wings need to see to give the Red Wings a third period lead.
I think one of the best things for me right now for the Red Wings, other than, the increase in shooting, is they're taking the puck to the middle of the ice, that home plate area. Other than really the Gustafsson goal and I guess the Berggren game winner, which we'll talk about momentarily, all those goals are in the home plate area. They're taking the puck to the net. They're not taking the perimeter shots that they've been taking almost all year. And it's great to see that they are going to the dirty areas.
It's a huge part of the game, one that they were sorely lacking. And again, the Red Wings they don't have a big forward group.
No.
It's easy to just wash your hands of it and say DeBrincat, Kane, Berggren, Raymond even, with their size, it's hard to get to the middle of the ice. And they don't care. They are muscling their way through, which is a huge, huge, huge relief to see. Again, still the Red Wings. So 4-3 lead in the third period turns into a 4-4 tie with just under 3 minutes left. James Van Riemsdyk smacks in a rebound off a save that the goalie has to make there.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. And again, to turn a negative into a positive, you give up the lead with under 3 minutes left. Easy to fold. And then comes the challenge.
I didn't even think that was going to get challenged. And when it did, I was shocked. And I was thinking, maybe they saw something that we didn't see at home. But, every replay they showed, I don't think desperation's the right word to describe it, but confusing that they challenged it, especially given the time. And I think Ken Daniels on the broadcast said Columbus had scored in their last 9 games when given a power play. So it's very risky.
They had a power play goal this game.
Yes.
I saw the phrase about goaltender interference being thrown around online afterwards. What even is goalie interference? Because we've seen a lot of very soft goalie interference calls, and there was some theory to, okay, well, they overturn based on not a lot traditionally, so maybe this is one of those. I can't buy into that because even the ticky-tack ones, the established precedent is pretty clear. An opposing player goes into the blue paint of his own volition and makes contact with the goalie. Even if it's the slightest contact, if you go into the blue on your own, you are on the hook.
Yeah.
And that is so firmly established this year in the NHL too. I would estimate a 95% success rate on challenges one way or the other if that is the circumstance. This wasn't that. Yes, Van Riemsdyk goes into the crease of his own volition. There is very, very slight contact made. However, it was after the puck had already slipped through. At no point did Van Riemsdyk impede any chance to make a save. That, I think, was the big critical factor as to why I'm with you. I would have not challenged this. I think it was a bad challenge, and obviously, spoiler, it did not get overturned. The goal stood. The Red Wings had to go on the penalty kill for the final 2 minutes, which I guess it's a good vote of confidence for the penalty kill that McLellan trusted him that much to throw out that challenge in that circumstance with that low of odds. But still, my ultimate takeaway is I really didn't like that he challenged that.
Yeah, if it's a blowout game or it's not the final few minutes of the game, yeah, sure, roll the dice. Hoping your penalty kill can kill that off if you get it wrong. But given the circumstances and the timing of when that challenge was made, I was really confused and pretty shocked that they went with it. But this is why we're hockey podcasters and not hockey coaches or players, because it ultimately led to maybe one of the defining moments of between at least our podcast episodes, a massive moment for the Red Wings.
When you're running hot, even bad decisions turn into good fate.
Yeah.
Because again, I will stand by that was a bad challenge, should not have happened. Even with the run hot, McLellan's not perfect. Things happen. But
insane.
As the penalty expires, and they had Jonatan Berggren serving it, because obviously he doesn't play the penalty kill. Ben Sherratt with a huge shot block. Tyler Mott comes in and collects the puck. Looks up. There's Berggren.
Dives, makes a diving play to get the puck into the neutral zone.
The dive is a great detail to point out. Berggren walks in all alone. Given the circumstance, was there any doubt in your mind that wasn't going in the net?
We saw that goal the other night as well, so it felt like carbon copy. And honestly, other than maybe Marco Kasper, there's probably nobody else that I feel that I'm more happy scored that goal.
Yeah, he's been playing a lot more under McLellan. He seems to trust him. They have a good rapport. He's been playing well. The stats are now starting to follow. So yeah, there's in the feel-good sense of who scored that goal, it's huge. And obviously with the implications of giving you a 5-4 win, you're now 2 points closer to a team you're chasing in the standings. And just the memeability of it all, that's one of the top moments of the season this year.
Absolutely. The Red Wings have been ascending in terms of vibes lately, and I think that took us to another peak. And obviously, it's going to continue into the next game. But coming into Columbus, if you're chasing each other in the wild card race, this is a 4-point game, and the Red Wings avoid overtime, they avoid a loss, and they beat the Columbus Blue Jackets with under a minute to go. So the Red Wings are running hot right now. It's refreshing and exciting to watch, and it's been all vibes lately.
With how the season's been going, I think everybody would be forgiven, even with the vibes coming up this high, to go into a game against Winnipeg with some skepticism.
Yeah.
One of the top teams in the league. The Red Wings just had a miracle moment to win a game. They're on the road now as well, so they're traveling from Columbus to Winnipeg, Hockey Night in Canada, to go play one of the top teams in the league. And the Red Wings lead off that game with what might be their best period of the year.
I don't even know what team came out of that locker room, because as much as we're saying the Red Wings have been looking hot lately and they've been playing well and totally rejuvenated, I haven't seen that Red Wings team. I don't even know.
Montreal of last year?
That's kind of what I was thinking, but not over a sustained period of time. It's someone has abducted the Detroit Red Wings and put elite hockey talent in that lineup right now. It's unbelievable to watch.
Now, one of the overarching storylines between the Columbus and the Winnipeg game was 7 of their 9 goals were scored by exactly who you would think would score the goals on the Red Wings. Larkin, Raymond, Kane, DeBrincat. Berggren had the one, Augustine had the one, and the rest have come from the usual suspects, we'll call it, which is great to see. And this game started off no different. Dylan Larkin got the lone goal on the power play.
Absolute D-Boss snipe show.
And I will say, to give someone else their flowers here, it was needed because, oh my God, Connor Hellebuyck is good.
Yeah. This game could have been 6-2, 7-2 if Connor Hellebuyck is not in net for the Winnipeg Jets.
It should have been 3-4-0 after that first period, just with the volume of shots Detroit laid on them and even the quality.
Yeah.
It's a shame, and I love Winnipeg, no shade to Winnipeg, but it's a shame that Connor Hellebuyck plays in Winnipeg because I don't think the average hockey fan is aware of how unreal this guy is. Yeah, he wins Vezinas and people seem to forget about it almost right after.
Yeah.
The guy is absolutely all world, but Dylan Larkin puts it right under the bar, 1-0, just after laying the boot to the Jets the entire first period. And again, the skepticism, I'm bad for this. The skepticism came into my mind in the first intermission, of there's no way they're going to do this to Winnipeg all game, are they? Can they? Lucas Raymond on the power play early in the second period. Again, another missile, a little bit of a lucky tip off the stick of Neil Pionk. But again, they're shooting.
Yeah, Raymond was basically at the top of the circle. It's not a high percentage shot. Obviously, you got Hellebuyck going left to right, and he gets a little bit of luck hitting Neil Pionk's stick, but that's not a surefire goal from that position. So all hats off to Lucas Raymond for letting that one go, and the Red Wings are up 2-0 on one of the best teams in the NHL.
Didn't last long, 2-1. Couple minutes later, the Winnipeg Jets get a lucky break of their own as Josh Morrissey's point shot, I think, deflects off Tyler Mott's stick and squeaks through. Red Wings are still winning, but one of those goals you're hoping is not a backbreaker because it was so soon after the Red Wings took the 2-goal lead. But that was about it for the second period. Not that it was a boring period from there on out, but not a lot happened. Not a ton of high-quality scoring chances. Both teams kind of seemed to lock it down a little bit, understanding the circumstances of the game.
Yep.
And even for the first little bit of the third period, it felt like more of the same. And again, this is going to be so weird to say. That's what good teams do.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense for the Winnipeg Jets. So refreshing to see it from the Detroit Red Wings.
I wouldn't say Winnipeg is the fastest team in the NHL, but they definitely have some good skaters, and they were trying to make it into a bit of a track meet. And the Red Wings, who we would probably unanimously agree, would say they're not the fastest team, but they were able to keep up, which was nice to see as well.
And I guess the theme of this episode, outside of the obvious optimism, breaking the habit. Because how often have we seen the Red Wings go into the third period with a 1-goal lead? Pre-Todd McLellan, you could script how this game was going to go. They were going to sit back, park the bus, get shelled in their own zone, inevitably blow the lead, tie game, and then whatever happens, happens. 7 minutes into the third period, Alex DeBrincat from Patrick Kane.
And it was a really nice goal. People might say, oh, is lucky, but you got to... Alex DeBrincat's got his stick in the right area. Patrick Kane just tries to find him through legs and, right place, right time. How many times have the Red Wings been in the right place, right time and have not capitalized? So, hey, kudos to those two guys. The Kane DeBrincat connection continues to be hot. It's incredible to witness. So, yeah, the Red Wings are sitting pretty against one of the top two teams in the league. And they weren't parking the bus. It was awesome.
Well, one of the big things on that goal is what you mentioned earlier. They took the middle of the ice. DeBrincat took the lane. Yeah, the puck had to get there, but that's the game of hockey. Sometimes it's going to get there, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it goes off the defenseman's skate in the net. Yeah. So he drove the net, took the middle. Kane got the puck there, stick on the ice, strong on it, tapped it in. Awesome, awesome goal. Nikolai Ehlers deflects a point shot about 10 minutes later to bring it to 3-2. Then the Winnipeg Jets pull the goalie with about 2 minutes left. And there's one player I think we really need to talk about in those final 2 minutes.
Is it Mo Seider?
It is absolutely Mo Seider. It is very easy to look at Mo Seider in a game like this leading up to that point and see the one assist and go, oh, he must be playing all right. But not truly appreciate what he actually brings to this Red Wings team. And nobody here listening is going to be surprised about us saying, oh my God, Mo Seider's so good defensively. But in a situation like that, where it's high stress, chaos, Winnipeg's just absolutely pouring it on. Anybody who's played hockey knows when you get in that situation, your mind's going a mile a minute.
Yeah, it's chaos out there.
There's Mo Seider, cool as can be. Just, I can't remember exactly how many passes he picked off, but he was a step ahead of Winnipeg the whole time. If that puck got near him, he was getting a stick on it. He was getting in the lane. They could not do anything. It was, I don't use this term lightly. It was Lidstrom-esque.
Yeah, there was one really good poke check. I can't remember who made the pass or the attempted pass. And it was like he put it on Mo Seider's tape because he read the play so well. Yeah, Mo Seider comes out of that game with a point. If you're just looking at counting stats, you're like, okay, pretty typical night. But when you go into the weeds and you really look at that game and that final stretch of the third period, just a masterclass from Moritz Seider.
The term number one defenseman gets thrown around a lot in the NHL. And the simplest way to look at that is just ice time. And yeah, Mo Seider is going to consistently lead this team in ice time, but bad teams still have to have an ice time leader, and they don't always have a number one caliber defenseman. The guy who can play both special teams, play those minutes, and you can throw out in a situation like the last 2 minutes of the game with full confidence that he's going to make the plays that need to be made, that's a number one defenseman.
He earned every cent of his contract in that 4 minutes last night. It was, I've run out of words to continue to describe it, but it was just, we're truly fortunate and lucky to have a player like Moritz Seider. And it's crazy to think that there's still more to his game that could be unlocked.
Honestly, you could make a case he's top 10, top 15 defenseman in the league right now.
100%.
But that arrow's still pointing up. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is the exciting part. Because under McLellan, he's tried new things. And I'm not going to say he's unlocked Mo Seider, because Mo Seider was elite long before he got here. Mo Seider was elite under Lalonde. But the possibility of a new coach bringing new elements to a player of his caliber's game, I'm not going to say it's game-changing, but is this the bump he needs to go from a top 15 defenseman to we're talking trophies in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think we'll debate the merits of the Norris till the end of time. And obviously you need to have counting stats to be included in the finalists or the top 5 group of Norris candidates. But I would be shocked, given what we've seen in the growth in Moritz Seider's career so far, that he doesn't have a Norris by the end of his career. It would completely shock me just because of how impressive and how much he continues to improve his game year over year.
Well, sometimes when you're playing smart, reliable, steady, like he did in those final 2 minutes, you get rewarded with the counting stats. Dylan Larkin, the empty netter from Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider. Whatever witch doctor had that curse over Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond definitely lifted it because he is on a heater now, which is great to see. And there's 3 names I want to talk about specifically coming away from these 2 games. Obviously, we talked about Mo Seider, but at forward, Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, Patrick Kane. I would argue those are the 3 that have found the uptick in success, that coach bump that we were hoping to see. Because Kane, to almost every Red Wings fan, I would say was a large disappointment this year before McLellan. DeBrincat was having a really good year, but he was up and down. And Larkin obviously was on that miserable cold streak.
Yeah.
All 3 absolute heaters right now. Is that just a fluke? Is that a new coach bump? What should we make of that?
It's crazy to think maybe, 3 episodes ago, we were talking about how, Patrick Kane looks like he's checked out, not interested anymore. And now it couldn't be any more different. I think it has something to do. I won't say it's all Todd McLellan coming in. I wouldn't say it's one thing or another, but I'm maybe really starting to believe that just play hockey is exactly what some of these guys needed. I think before the Red Wings were really trying to do too much with too little, and I think they've just simplified things. They've got an emotional coach. Well, I shouldn't say emotional, but a more emotional coach now that can kind of get the fire going in guys. And these are the guys who are benefiting the most. And I really do think Patrick Kane needed a coach like that when his game was not up to stuff at all. And it's really turned around.
Sometimes simplifying the game can up the creativity.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about as many other stuff. I remember, obviously not to take everything back to the Buffalo Bills, but I remember seeing a meme going around the internet of the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator's playbook. And it was just give Josh the ball, let Josh do cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of what works for Patrick Kane. Give Patrick Kane the puck, let him do cool stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure we're going to talk about the penalty kill at some point and how much better it is. And it's just a passive diamond. They're like, just do this. And it's way less things for them to think about. They're simplifying the game on both ends of the ice. And there's some guys who just need to be able to do what they do best. And those guys are benefiting the most. I think the one other guy that I've got a couple other guys, but one of the other guys that has benefited as well, I think, is Joe Veleno. Maybe, stats are looking a lot better than the pre-Todd McLellan era, but he's out there in the final 2 minutes with the top dogs last night, and he held his own. So flowers for Joe Veleno. He's looked great so far in the past 4 games that in the Todd McLellan era.
Another guy that I think we should probably give some credit to here, and I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when I say this, Andrew Kopp.
Yeah, he looked good last night. Obviously, the counting stats weren't there. Maybe it's familiarity playing in Winnipeg once again, but he's looked revitalized. Hopefully, the counting stats start to come for him, but I agree.
I think he has, again, there's very few people who dump on him more than I do, and I understand that. And I will argue very validly so for the most part. But he's got kind of the thankless role right now with the Red Wings where everybody knows what his contract is. Everybody knows what he's done since he's gotten to Detroit with said contract, and people have a very very unfavorable opinion of him.
Yeah.
And then the new coach comes in and he throws him up on the second line. Hey, buddy, you're centering DeBrincat and Kane. It better go well or else this entire fan base is going to turn on you even more than they already have. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be a counting stats guy again. To be fair, even before he got to Detroit, he wasn't a huge counting stats guy. But if he can do enough, just enough, to let Kane and DeBrincat do what they've been doing the last few games, that's all he needs to do.
Yeah.
Again, circling back to simplify the game, play effing hockey. If he is handling his role, which with those guys is going to be a lot of retrieving pucks, carrying the defensive load, just playing simple, predictable, reliable hockey, it will allow those guys to go out and do the things they do. And it's working. And when I saw him back up on the second line, I can't lie, my eyes rolled. I'm like, there's no way we're doing this again. Have we not learned our lesson? I was wrong. McLellan was right. They've been fantastic together.
Yeah, 100% agree. And the Red Wings can't solely rely on one line or one power play unit. So you got to try and get a guy like Andrew Copp going. And, we've seen Jonatan Berggren get going a little bit. Hopefully Marco Kasper can now start contributing a little bit more as well. But yeah, Andrew Copp, is he a second line center in the NHL? On a good team, absolutely not. But he's looked very capable the last little bit here. So hopefully he can start getting some of the production going. And for once, it feels like there's not a lot of qualms with Andrew Copp's game.
So the Red Wings are on a 4-game winning streak. 2 since our last episode. They're up to 38 points in 39 games. Only 1 game below 500 now, when I think we were literally 1 episode away from prospect profiles. I think everybody needs to know that. We were ready before that coaching change happened. I think Ryan said New Year probably is when we were going to start him up.
I have not received so many DMs about prospect profiles as I did between December 15th and the 31st. We were probably as close as we could have been to starting them.
And now here the Detroit Red Wings sit 2 points out of a wild card spot.
And who do they play this week on Tuesday? None other than that team holding that spot, the Ottawa Senators. So I just have such a tough time trying to figure out what the hell is going on with this team these days. But, when you're on a 4-game win streak, you try not to think about it too much. The Red Wings are a rocket ship up the standings right now. And Tuesday's probably the biggest game of the year so far. So it's exciting to see. Obviously, I think there's lots of stuff to still work on. There's a couple goals that are a little bit suspect that have gone in over the past couple games that require some tweaking. But overall, considering what we saw in December, mid-December and before, to now, it's night and day. And if NHL is nothing but entertainment, the entertainment value with the Detroit Red Wings right now is just off the charts.
And hopefully it can continue. Now, before the optimism gets too high about this playoff chase, though the Red Wings are only 2 points behind the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, they do have to leapfrog 4 teams to get there. So it's not just as simple as they need to make up those 2 points. They need to do it while outpacing 4 teams. And that's also not even factoring in the fact that they are tied completely on record with the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah.
The only difference is the Red Wings have 5 more regulation wins, so they hold the tiebreaker over Philly, which Philly, how do you have 17 wins and only 9 in regulation? And the New York Rangers are only 3 points behind. I understand they're a dumpster fire, but they have the talent. If they get it together, they are still very much in this conversation. That being said, the 4 teams that Detroit has to leapfrog, the Montreal Canadiens.
It makes those back-to-back losses against Montreal that much more tough to swallow, but continue.
But they are a team that I would say is vulnerable. They are not what you would call a juggernaut.
Yes.
The Pittsburgh Penguins, who they have been hot. They have Sidney Crosby. They have Evgeny Malkin. I don't expect them to completely fall off a cliff here. But the Red Wings have the tiebreaker on them. The Columbus Blue Jackets, who Detroit just took 2 important points from. And again, a team that
People did not expect them to be hunting for the wild card. I don't believe this year.
Yeah, it's a awesome story and super happy for Columbus fans, given everything they've had to go through. But again, not a team that anybody would be surprised if they fell off. And then the Ottawa Senators, who, this is what everybody has been expecting from Ottawa for years, so they're finally there, and I don't think they're about to drop off. But again, this game on Tuesday is massive. So yes, Detroit has to jump 4 teams. And yes, that is still probably unlikely. But given the 4 teams have to jump, it's far from impossible.
Yeah, we've talked about the mid-off all year, and I'd certainly say there's a lot of teams in the wild card hunt who are part of the mid-off. And who would have thought the Red Wings could have won 4 games in a row, maybe 5 after Tuesday. So as Kevin Garnett said, anything is possible, and I wouldn't count the Red Wings out. Am I optimistic that the Red Wings have made a turn of the season and they're going to right the ship? I think that remains to be seen. It's going to take a lot for them to really make a push for the playoffs, but I would say the same thing almost about every other team that they're looking at to overtake to make the wild card.
Yeah, you're not staring up and saying we have to pass Boston or Tampa Bay or Carolina. These are, like, I like the way you phrase it, it's perfect, accompanying teams in the mid-off.
Exactly. So, and I'm not going to tell anybody how to feel about this. If right now you're happy and you're like, we're making the playoffs, this is what I'm hitching my horse to, you should absolutely do that. And I'm not going to tell people that the season's over or that this is how you got to feel about the Red Wings at this time. It's just much more enjoyable to watch, and I'm just along for the ride. And if the Red Wings can make this thing interesting and make us have some important games come March, I am all for it at this point.
What percentage would you give that the Red Wings actually give this a real run and get into a playoff spot?
I think, ask me again on Wednesday, and I think that will change my percentage drastically, because if they can take 2 points off of Ottawa and essentially be tied with them in points for the final wild card, obviously other teams may be playing games in there as well. So standings could look wildly different between now and next episode. If gun to the earth, you have to take a number. And I think we talked about this maybe 4 episodes ago, and it was like 5% chance. Like, we were at the lowest of the low. At this point, they're 2 points behind, 1 game. They played 1 more game than Ottawa. So I don't know. It's more than what I would have said 4 episodes ago. Just because today is supposed to be a happy episode and an all-time vibe episode, I'll say 20%. And I feel like that's really high, but I could be convinced of anything right now.
I think 20 is about where I'm at as well, which, again, a lot of people are going to be angry listening. I get it. I think I was at like 3% not that long ago. So, again, a testament to how far this team has come in such a short amount of time. It's crazy to just point out, just a thought, something to think about. The Red Wings have 2 games in hand on Boston and are only 6 points back.
That's, another important thing. The picture has not been painted for the rest of the season. We're 40 games-ish for most teams into the season right now. We're at the halfway point. There's still half the season to go. Some teams are one key. Linus Ullmark goes down, Ottawa is sinking like a ship. There's so many factors that can still play out, so I think it would be foolish at this point to say the Red Wings are out of this thing, because they can make another 4 win streak happen, and they're right in the mix, and they could be in control of their own destiny. So it's exciting times.
Look at us. Who would have thought we'd be here?
Not me. I was paying far more attention to the World Juniors this year than I typically do. And that was because I thought prospect profiles were happening very soon.
I am very deep down the prospect rabbit hole to this point because of December. Like, I'm very well educated to this point. I'll call it on the top 6 to 7 of the draft. Now I'm a little upset I wasted all that time. I mean, it's good to have, but
you're going to have to compartmentalize that for a little bit.
I could have held off.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of prospects, after this short break from our sponsors, we will talk about some Red Wings prospects who have been playing at the World Juniors. In the spirit of unbridled optimism that is this episode, it's only fitting that the Red Wings at the World Juniors are continuing that theme. Axel Sandin Pellikka, though unfortunately eliminated in the semifinals by Finland in overtime, was leading the tournament in scoring to that point as a defenseman, and after the loss was named a top 3 player of the tournament for Sweden. As mentioned, they were knocked out by the Finns, and fellow Red Wings prospect Jesse Kiiskinen, who is leading the Finns in goals and was named a top 3 player of the tournament for Finland. And those Finns are meeting in the gold medal game this evening. The Americans, led by the now all-time winningest goaltender at the World Juniors for the United States of America, Trey Augustine, and Max Plante, who is not having the statistical tournament of the other 3, but by the underlying metrics is actually performing very well at this tournament. So if what you were hoping from the World Juniors was nothing other than the Red Wings prospects to shine, congratulations, you're having a great tournament.
Yeah, if you were going into this being like, oh, the Red Wings are in the dumps, but it's great that the prospects are making a big statement here at the World Juniors. Well, now you've got the best of both worlds, because the prospects for the Detroit Red Wings have put a statement on this tournament, and I think everybody's happy. The tank commanders are happy because the prospects are looking good. The push for the playoffs fans are happy because the Red Wings are streaking right now. It's a good time in Red Wings land, and the World Juniors continues to be one of the best tournaments. It's so unpredictable, even though they say there's 4 teams that can win this every year. Well, it's anybody's tournament now, I think, given the rise in some of these hockey nations, and to see guys like Axel Sandin Pellikka, Jesse Kiiskinen, and Trey Augustine do their thing and be such key components of good teams. It's been a great World Juniors.
We knew all of these players were good going into the tournament. Is there one of the Red Wings group here that I don't know how to phrase this, because I don't want to say surprised. We know they're good, but pleasantly surprised in what you've seen relative to expectations?
It's so hard to say, right? Because Axel Sandin Pellikka has been playing in the SHL amongst men. He should come into this tournament and be able to bully his way around the ice. And he's done that. And now he's tied for scoring in the tournament. So it's hard to say that surprised me. It's great to see. And I think for me, Trey Augustine might be the guy there, because in the first game against Germany, he did not look good at all.
Oh, he was bad. He was real bad.
He was bad, let in some bad goals that I was just completely shocked. He's the best goalie in the NCAA. But holy crap, has that guy just turned his game around and is an absolute gamer. The Americans very well could have been in the bronze medal game today instead of the gold medal game if it wasn't for some massive timely saves by Trey Augustine. So it's hard. I'm not going to say I'm shocked by his performance, but the fact that I was shocked in game 1 saying, who is this guy? To now being like, he is the all-time winningest goalie at the World Juniors and he is an absolute dog. I think he's my guy.
Little resilience never hurt anybody in situations like this. He's been such a front runner for so long. It was almost shocking seeing him be human. Which is insane to say for a goalie, but the way he bounced back, the New Year's Eve game where he just shut down Canada, didn't have much of a challenge against Switzerland in the quarterfinals, but did what needed to be done. And that one save he had on Czechia in the third period. Yeah. Oh, I almost pulled my groin just watching it. Like
every man every adult over the age of 30 pulled their groin watching that save, even some professional goalies. So it's a short tournament, and goaltending is the most mental, for good and bad, the most mental position in hockey. And the fact that he was able to take a really bad game and just keep his confidence and build his game back up and leading the United States to the gold medal game has been really exciting. I think the other guy that I've been thoroughly impressed with is Jesse Kiiskinen, because on paper, Finland is not one of the strongest teams. But when they come together, they're always greater than the sum of their parts. And he is one of the driving forces. Him and Konsta Helenius are the two dogs on that team. And he leads Finland in scoring. And it takes a lot to take a team that I didn't really think would. I thought for sure, Finland would sniff around the bronze medal game in this tournament. But to see them in the gold medal game, a team that plays like a team and for their country, and Jesse Kiiskinen is leading the team in goal scoring, I think he's one of the shining points for Red Wings fans as well.
It's funny that you started with Sandin Pellikka, and I'm with you, but for me with Sandin Pellikka, I expected him to dominate this tournament.
Me too.
Not to this level.
Yeah.
But I expected him to be in the conversation for top defenseman of the tournament. I mean, hell, he won it last year. And yeah, he's probably the favorite to win it right now, although them not playing in the gold medal game probably takes him out of the running to win it.
Yeah.
Probably be Cole Hudson, Zeev Buium now. Either way, fantastic tournament for him. Augustine, again, I probably expected him to come in and dominate. And outside of that shaky start, he has. I think Kiiskinen's my guy for this one because, again, we knew he was a guy. We're like, this guy, there's something there. He's got a chance to be a depth player on the Red Wings. And I still don't think he's going to be a top 6 guy on the Red Wings ever, but there's a chance he's a dude.
Yeah.
Like, he can score. He's scoring in Liga against men. He's scoring back foot one-timers from the point, redirections in front. Like, the variety in which he's making himself dangerous is probably what's impressed me the most with him this tournament. And then you couple that with the great piece that Scott Wheeler put out about him where, everybody talking to him, he's like an all-time hockey guy, competes his ass off, loves the game. Like just, the rink rat type. Like the guy exists solely to play hockey. And then you see him putting it together on a stage like Liga. And then a stage like this. Yeah, I've always thought he had a chance to make the Red Wings, be a depth guy. I think I'm starting to at least come around on the idea that there might be something more there. Again, not top 6. This guy's going to go score 25 in the NHL. Not that. But a third line 2020 guy? I think that might be in the cards.
And it's all that more impressive because he doesn't have, the U.S. is just a total package of talent on those teams. So, if you've got a guy like, I don't know, Ryan Leonard, he's put up tons of points this tournament, looked really good, but his supporting cast is incredible. And it's not just diminish what Finland's done, but Jesse Kiiskinen is looked at as one of the key components, and his supporting cast is not nearly as strong as what some of these other massive hockey nations are. So the fact that he's been able to sort of do this in this tournament against the best at his age bracket, it's great to see. And making the NHL is a long road. It continues to be long even after you're drafted. But there is certainly a chance where this guy could be that productive third line winger at the NHL level, and he's right-handed, so that helps as well. Yeah, a pleasant surprise for sure. I don't think I saw him leading Finland in scoring in this tournament, but like I said, a pleasant surprise.
Trade him while his value's at an all-time high. Maybe to Vancouver.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't have a better segue than that, but we have to talk about what do we even call what's happening in Vancouver right now?
I don't know, man. It's such a gong show. The amount of people that have come out of the woodwork who've either played with JT Miller or have coached Elias Petterson, and they're just like, oh yeah, it's way worse than it looks, or it's not as bad as it looks. It's crazy. This is ultimate hockey drama right now.
It's insane how public it is too.
Unbelievable.
When was the last time we seen anything to this level? Was it the Carlson Hoffman thing?
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point where almost every reporter is coming out and saying, yeah, these guys can't play together. I was watching, it was one of the big benefits of the Red Wings being on Hockey Night in Canada last night was I was watching the headlines with Elliot Friedman, who's always on stuff like this. And he was saying Vancouver's got every option on the table. Trade none, trade one, even trade both.
That would be crazy.
That would be insane. And I don't think that's going to happen. Because again, with their contracts and everything, these are not easy trades to piece together. But you are a team that's supposed to be competing for the Cup this year, as Vancouver is. You have two superstars, full stop. Now, big asterisk next to that because Pettersson's having a down year and Miller had that, I'll call it hiatus, where he had to step away from the team for unknown reasons. But still, two star players. And you can't get them to play nice when you're trying to win a Stanley Cup? There's very few issues in the game of hockey where I struggle to form an opinion. Even if it's not a good opinion, I can at least have an opinion of, I think this is what's going on, or I think this should happen, or X, Y, and Z. I am at a loss on this one. I don't know who's to blame. I don't know what the path forward is. I don't know what the answer is.
I don't know either. And there's been lots of teams that have won the Stanley Cup or have found success in the NHL playoffs where not everybody likes each other. You're going to have stylistic differences in how you approach the game. And some guys are more vocal. Obviously, JT Miller is the more vocal one in this circumstance. It's just crazy to me how public this has all gotten, how unfixable, unrepairable this seems to be. You'd think this team was battling for one of the draft lottery slots, not trying to win the Stanley Cup. And they've got Quinn Hughes, who, for me, is in the Hart conversation at this point. You'd think that
Careful there, touchy subject.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone. You'd think the Vancouver brass and the executives and the members of the team and the coaching staff would want to find a resolution to this, because you can't keep airing this dirty laundry and let this thing keep burning uncontrollably for the remainder of the season.
There's a famous story, and for those who haven't heard it, of the 2004 Tampa Bay Lightning. Vinny LeCavalier, the team's star player, and John Tortorella, the head coach, hated each other. Publicly just despised each other. Jay Feaster, the GM of the Lightning, sat them down and said, I'm not firing him. I'm not trading you. Figure it out.
Yeah.
And they won the Stanley Cup, to your point about guys hating each other and still making it work. If you are the GM of the Canucks, what's your approach on this one? You trading one of them? You having a meeting like that? What's your preferred option?
Well, that's the problem, right? Like, every time you try and trade a quote unquote superstar, you never win in value back. You always get prospects, you always get picks, and you have to realize that value later down the road. And Vancouver's not in that position to want to realize value later. They are win now. Our team is built to win. For me, unless they are getting a fleecing back the other way, and you would absolutely need a centerman coming back the other way, I don't know how Vancouver escapes this in a trade. So for me, it's figure this out amongst yourselves, and whatever that solution looks like, that's what we're going to do, because I just don't see how trading either of these players is a net positive in terms of asset management for the Vancouver Canucks.
Now, I got to ask the obvious question. If you're Steve Yzerman of the Detroit Red Wings, are you calling? And if so, about who?
Okay, so there's two players involved. I think they'd be more comfortable moving on with JT Miller because he's 31 years old. He makes $8 million a year, so he's older and makes less money than Elias Pettersson. So you call for a guy like JT Miller. He's a unbelievable centerman. He's got the counting stats to back it up, and you can clearly tell his give a shit meter is at 10 at all times. And those are the types of guys I think you can win with. what would Vancouver want in return? That is the big question for me.
I think Friedman, as part of his reporting, mentioned Vancouver wants a center in return. Obviously, they're not going to get a center the caliber of either of these guys, but a center. And probably one who's, playing now, not, again, like you mentioned, 2 years away, the unrealized value. I gotta disagree with you, though. If I'm Yzerman, I'm going after Petterson.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, I think
he's younger. I mean, he makes more money, but I think getting him out of this situation, I think will help rejuvenate his season.
We'll get Petterson, Marner, the the high skill, not loved by the fan base, and bring him into a better situation. This is how we win.
Mikko Rantanen, come on down as well. We'll spend all the money on those three guys.
Nah, he's not damaged goods yet. We can't touch that.
That's right.
He'll be too expensive. No, I think with Petterson, I agree with you. If you get him out of that situation, I think it unlocks him a bit. I think there is real concern about he might be a little mentally soft, and that's probably a bit more harsh than it needs to be. But he's up and down. He's the polar opposite of that JT Miller, hard, heavy personality type win at all costs, which does come with some issues for an on-ice performance. The only thing I struggle with here as a Red Wings fan wanting Elias Pettersson on the team, if Vancouver wants a center, we ain't got none.
Yeah.
We can give future, who would Vancouver want off the roster that the Red Wings should be willing to part with? I can't think of anybody.
Nobody. That's the problem.
Kane, I would be shocked if he'd waive to go out west. He's not up and moving his family 3 time zones. DeBrincat, maybe, but again,
but they got Brock Besser. That really doesn't fix a problem. Moving someone fixes a problem that they see, but it doesn't. They already got that guy in Brock Besser, I think.
Yeah. And then the Red Wings aren't even entertaining the idea of moving Larkin or Raymond. So
doesn't make sense.
It has to be an entirely futures package, which I do think, before everybody says I don't think this is possible, I think the Red Wings could easily get there on value.
100%.
And they should do it because they have enough of a pipeline to be able to give it up. But I just can't see a world where any of the equal value packages that Detroit can offer make any sense for the Canucks right now. Because you give up Danielson or Casper, a first-round pick another top prospect, and JT Compher or Joe Veleno to give them a center?
Yeah.
But why? There's no way Vancouver would want to do that, would they?
If they're in win now mode, I just don't see how that makes any sense for them. And there is some risk to this, right? There's no guarantee that Elias Pettersson comes to Detroit and becomes the 100-point player that everybody thinks he can be for his entire career. So I just don't see how these two teams line up as trade partners in this sense. I think there's other teams who are in win now mode or going the other way, like the New York Rangers. And there's been links, obviously, with JT Miller having played in New York before. The links there make a lot of sense, and I'm sure the Rangers are trying to make more moves. Yeah, I just really struggled to see how the Red Wings could get involved in this. Everybody would love to have an Elias Pettersson or a JT Miller, but you got to have what each other want, and I just really struggled to see how the fit is there in terms of trade partners.
Nevertheless, it's not going to stop me from daydreaming about Andrew Kopp going back down to the third line and Elias Pettersson sliding in between Kane and DeBrincat.
Yeah. I put my 20% making the playoffs changes a lot if that's what your 1 and 2 centers are. So yeah, nice to daydream, but it's just so hard to see how that makes sense from either team. But stranger things have happened. If Steve Yzerman's looking to wait for that moment to make the biggest splash possible, that might be it. Vancouver's hanging on here to be in the wild card. They've got Calgary right up their butt, 1 point behind, and they're 5 points behind Colorado for the first wild card spot. So the time is ticking for them. Can you get them to make a knee-jerk reaction and get them to agree to something that they may not have previously in a trade. Who knows? But I'm sure every single GM is calling about JT Miller and Elias Pettersson.
On that note, now we will jump into overtime.
We're going to overtime.
And thanks to everybody who submitted Patreon questions for this overtime. So I'm going to start with Jeff Lehman, who says, and you said 100 point pace would be hard.
We're 100 or batting 1,000 right now, so why not?
164 point pace as it stands right now. Brian Ramsey says, with the surge in optimism, is it more or less likely Yzerman makes a notable trade before the deadline?
If I know anything about Steve Yzerman, which is essentially nothing, because you find out nothing about Steve Yzerman and what he's trying to do with this team, he doesn't react emotionally. He's not going to make a big splash just because the Red Wings have won 4 games in a row. He's not going to make a big splash because the Red Wings lost 4 in a row. How many games this year did we say, man, I think that's the end for Derek Lalonde? I think he stays status quo unless this team racks off another clip it. If they put in another 4-game winning streak, I would be shocked if they change between being buyers or sellers at the deadline based on winning 4 games.
I'm with you in the sense that I don't think it makes it any more or less likely. What I will say is if they make a trade to add, let's call it Cousins or Petterson.
Yeah.
I think it makes more sense now because every trade he should make should be with the long-term future in mind. And both those trades, hypothetical trades, suit that goal.
Yeah.
But they also do have a huge benefit this year, which now might be part of the conversation. Not the main piece of the conversation,
Agreed.
but part of the conversation.
Agreed.
All right. Joseph Barry says, I think we owe Todd McLellan a thank you for saving you boys from prospect profiles.
Like what we've said 1,000 times, I don't know what's happened to the Detroit Red Wings of 2024, but they don't exist anymore.
Awit says, is Simon Edvinsson having a Mo Seider rookie year? I don't think he will reach the same point total as Mo in his rookie year, but how effective is he for the team? Has to be pretty close.
I would say it's certainly reminiscent. I wouldn't say it's a 1-to-1 thing because Moritz Seider was playing on the corpse of an NHL team on an island by himself, but I would certainly say he's having an impressive season. It helps he gets to play with a guy like Mo Seider up until recently. But nonetheless, I think Simon Edvinsson has had a fantastic season.
I don't think he's at Mo Seider's rookie season, but it's hard to argue the impact.
100%.
He completely changed the outlook of this defense because when they need it, they can pair him with Seider and the Red Wings have a legitimate number 1 pair. Or as McLellan's utilizing, now you can put him on a second pair and he can carry it. He's not a passenger. The counting stats aren't there, though not terribly far behind. But I think the defensive impact's equivalent.
I agree. And I think, honestly, Edvinsson playing with Seider for the majority of the season thus far has actually made Simon Edvinsson's life easier now that he has to play with a guy like Jeff Petrie. I think if he would have just remained apart from Mo Seider the whole season, I don't think his development would have looked nearly as impressive as it has now because I don't think he would have made the leaps and bounds he could have not playing or playing with someone other than Moritz Seider.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. I think it put the spotlight on what he's been doing. And it sucks that he's not technically Calder eligible because I genuinely believe right now, if he was, he'd be one of the 3 finalists with Michkov and Celebrini.
He'd be right up there. I obviously there's half a season to go, but he has done things impressively for a quote-unquote rookie defenseman.
Could you imagine how fun and insufferable the Twitter arguments would be about who gets that third Calder finalist spot, him or Lane Hudson.
Oh, God.
You would go to war with the entire province of Quebec. That would be your dream.
Apparently, Ryan is the one who fights them online. I'm the one who fights them in spirit and physically. So I'll leave that one up to Ryan. But yeah, that Twitterverse argument would be insufferable.
All right. Final question for this episode. Jack's dad asks, with so many ELCs on the way and the salary cap increasing, how aggressive do you think Yzerman will be in the hunt for a big fish? Aside from Rantanen and Marner, are there any pending UFAs you'd be okay overspending for? Speaking of UFAs, what do you think of a Taves-Kane reunion for League Min? I'm not getting into the Taves thing. I can't without sounding like an a-hole.
I can't do that either.
But in terms of the big fish likelihood, I'm going to say high, very high. I think he's going to be in on all of them. I think he's going to be in on all of them who are available via trade. I'd be shocked if he hasn't picked up the phone and called Vancouver. Does that mean he's likely going to land them? No, there's probably going to be 16 other teams that are also calling about Marner and Rantanen and speaking to their agents and trying to figure out what it's going to take. But I think he's going to be in it.
Yeah, 100%. It wouldn't make sense to not at least see what it could take to get some of those guys here.
As for the second part about the other UFAs, there are other UFAs I like, but this is where I get hesitant to say overspend on. I'm a believer you have to maintain your value in the bottom part of your roster, and you overspend for the superstars. And I don't think there's any other superstars that are possibly going to be available. I don't even think Marner and Rantanen are going to actually make it that far. But if they do, those are the types of players you go 10% over their perceived value. I could rattle off a very long list of players I like, but I wouldn't overspend for them.
Yeah, like I just pulled up the list very quickly here. Like the problem with UFAs is they're all 27, 28, and it's like, yeah, it's not ideal. You know, maybe you target some RFAs, but you know, a guy like Nikolai Ehlers is going to be one of the top of the second tier of possible UFAs. Like it's
but so. Are you giving him 7 years? Like,
no,
I'm not.
Like, and I think Jacob Chychrun, he shoots left. He's going to be UFA. It's just
Jacob Chychrun solves a lot of problems, but he's going to probably get what, 8-9 mil? You paying him that?
Yeah, and you're going to have to pay Simon Edmondson and Axel Sandin Pellikka when he arrives too. So it's the ultimate game of Minesweeper is the UFA market. There's going to be a couple guys who are for sure home runs, and everybody else is going to be overpaid and not as productive as what the contract they sign is worth.
Where Yzerman has had success in free agency isn't with overpaying for those, perceived second, third line, second pair guys. It's when he's moneyballed it.
Yeah.
And found an aging but still effective David Perron for cheap. Say what you want about Daniel Sprong's defense, but he got them a lot of goals for not a lot of money. Shane Gostisbehere, where he was at in his career at the time, brilliant signing. Those 1-2 year stopgap cheap deals on guys that have very obvious flaws, but very obvious strengths. That's where I'm looking if I'm Yzerman. I don't want any more 3, 4, 5 year contracts to 29-year-old okay free agents. Find your 1 or 2 year guys until you can get the big fish or until your prospects are ready.
100%.
And on that note, thanks for listening to this slightly less professional episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. I appreciate you all putting up with me and Evan. Obviously, without Ryan's technical ability and hosting duties, things may not have ran as smoothly, but we didn't sewer the season either.
Hopefully not too many clippable moments that we can look back on in a few months and say, I can't believe we said those things. We were so wrong. Why did we let our emotions get the best of us? Only time will tell.
We were far more measured in this episode than when Ryan and I were in the same situation last year. So really, it's his fault.
When things go poorly, it is always his fault. That has never changed in the 10 years we've been doing this.
That being said, all the headaches we have went through to make this work, unfortunately does prove his value to this podcast. So we'll thank him for that.
And now everybody gets exactly what they want. And this is why you should subscribe to Patreon, is because now I get the privilege and the pleasure of reading out everyone's names. I'm so glad we didn't tell anyone this in advance, because the amount of Bruce Boudreau's that would be there, it would be substantial. So without further ado, our name level Patreons, we couldn't do without you guys. You're the lifeblood of this podcast. We're so thankful for all of you. First is Arjun Shanker, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Askerstam, Yuka Niki Nitorp, I'm so sorry. Let the Kids Play, Liv Ton Meth, Martin Langren, C. Lyon, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zawiska, Admiral S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alec Torger, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Carl Bertana-Lusky, I'm so sorry, Carl Provy, Citizen High Five, Clipcop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstem, Dickens Seider, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Griffin, Hatrick Sandin Pellikka, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, I Met Larkin Once, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, aka Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kalen Wood, Connor's Left Knee, Margaret Anuth, I'm so sorry. Margaret. Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Enlund, Mr. Kuzi, R.A., Riley Enright, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin. Can't say this one, but it's something about cider. Skeletor, Stephen Orlieb. I'm so sorry, everyone. This should be the Patreon exclusive.
This is going to be the best part of the episode.
That's what I appreciate about you. Wallman's Elite Dancing D, What in a Rut. The Yzerman Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, San Bengtson, Aaron, AB, All Motor No Hands, Annie Stanislawski, Antonio Gracias, and Axel's Sandin Pellikka, Bellingham Acid Balls, Beck, C.E. Hayes, Chimkin Nuggets, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prada, Darren Fick, Datsuk Stangleberries, Deep Insider, Dylan Larkin Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, Hey Sexy Lady, Open and Chungus Style. I'm sure that's not right, but I don't care. James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim Jam Rhapsody, Jojo Shabadoo. Now I have to learn how to click on a Macintosh. That's not a person. I just said that. Josh Yelton, Chaotic Monkey, Kevin McCracken, K-Waz, Larkin's Loyal Lemming, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hall, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Mitch Minier, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Ryan M., Sam Magliocci, Steven, the other guy, the Hodag, the Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings Fan in St. Louis, in brackets, Scott, and your second favorite patron. I'm so sorry. I hope you all had as much pleasure doing that as I did. We'll be back to regular scheduled programming with Ryan. Maybe not Ryan doing that. Maybe that's my new full-time gig on the podcast. But thank you so much, everyone, for bearing with us. Hopefully the good vibes continue, and we'll see you guys all next episode. Till then, take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.